I recently heard a pastor say on a singles podcast that his church is 65% single. Is there a need for understanding the Proverbs 31 wife? Absolutely. But imagine having the majority of your church being single and talking about the Proverbs 31 wife. An unintended consequence of this message is women, not just wives, are sacrificially doing and showing up for others, often to the detriment of self and self-care. Or single women are overextending themselves and giving wives benefits to men who aren't their husbands because they are trying to prove that the cow is worth buying. What's up, y'all? It's Coach Roberta, your friendly disruptor and soul coach. So today's topic, too many single women are trying to be Proverbs 31 wives before becoming Song of Solomon at singles. And that's a quote from Coach Roberta. And here's what I mean. Hear me out. So first, if you look at Proverbs 31, you will notice that it is a mom talking to her son. 2, the Proverbs is instructing him by prophecy what to look for in a wife. And that is noted in Proverbs 31:1. It says, the words of King Lemuel, the prophecy that his mother taught him. 3, many scholars say that Lemuel is a pet name or a pseudonym for Solomon. 4, if that's the case, that would mean that the mom, in this case, is Bathsheba giving advice to her son. Now, if you know her story, let your imagination roam just a little bit and think of her backstory. And then think that it's that woman, Bathsheba, having this conversation with her son on how to find a good wife. Got that image in your mind? A side note, if you want me to break down the implications of how Bathsheba, being mom, shapes the context, let me know in the comments by typing Bathsheba. Number 5, this is a female to male conversation, and yet, how many men's conferences or books have you seen or heard of that are talking to men about the Proverbs 31 woman? I think I've seen maybe about 2 books on the Proverbs 31 man. 6, conversely, what Christendom has done was to entice, and some, not all churches, have manipulated women and young ladies by using reverse engineering techniques to have women, not only wives, but women in general, focusing on what they need to be or become to get or keep a man. But the proverb is about wives, not women in general. But there is a unintended consequence. Now stick with me. Don't tune me out, because the enemy is subtle. And just like he changed one small word with Eve in the garden and said, you shall not surely die, when God said that you will die. And then Eve in turn added another word and said, he said that we shouldn't eat it or touch it. A similar thing has happened with the Proverbs 31 movement and trend. The Proverbs, again, is talking about wives, not all women. Now, here are some unintended long-term consequences that I've observed. It skips over a whole season of singlehood for women. It sends a message to girls and women that their primary and sometimes sole goal is to become a wife. Now, here's a bit of history. I remember when the Proverbs 31 woman movement came out. Just a little bit about me. I've been in church my whole life. I've worked in ministry. I've been married and divorced. But what I recall was, and I did some research also. So the history that I am familiar with was in 1998, a popular televangelist. He was a songwriter, a singer named Mike Murdoch. He authored a book, and it became very popular at the time, called the Proverbs 31 Woman, and the subtitle was A 31-Day Mentorship Program of Wisdom. He has written over 250 books, many of which have been translated in various languages, and his reach in his heyday was far and wide. I'm not sure what it is now, but that's kind of the backstory that started this trend and momentum. Now, what I also learned was in 1993, a young lady by the name of E.R. Reed, a Black woman, also wrote a book called The Proverbs 31 Woman, a study aid. So here's my point. Bear in mind that most Black churches are 70% women. I'm not sure what the percentage is in other churches. I do know that there are a larger population, or over the years that I've been going to church. And again, I've been in church my whole life. I'm now in my 60s. I grew up Lutheran, which means that I was going to a predominantly white church, and there were usually husband and wife and children in those churches. So again, fast forward to today, or more contemporarily in the last 20 years, most Black churches are 70% women. And I recently heard a pastor say on a live recorded singles podcast with a panel that his church is 65% single. So imagine whether it is books of old or the way of thinking. Is there a need for understanding the Proverbs 31 wife? Absolutely. But imagine having the majority of your church being single and talking about the Proverbs 31 wife. Again, are there things that people can glean? Yes, but most of the time when you start hearing these themes and it talks about how well of a woman she was, an unintended consequence of this message is women, not just wives, are sacrificially doing and showing up for others, often to the detriment of self and self-care. Or single women are overextending themselves and giving wives benefits to men who aren't their husbands because they are trying to prove that the cow is worth buying. You heard the saying, why buy the cow if the milk's free? So we see this all the time. Well, you probably know people in your family who, whether they cohabitate, but they do all the things. They are good women. They may even be Christian and godly women. And so they have homemakers, abilities, they have a servant's heart, and they show up in this way. But a lot of times they're doing it because they are trying to prove in advance to a man that they are wifey material. I understand the conundrum that many churches face as more women became single moms, divorced, or widowed. Proverbs 31 is full of nuggets and principles to glean from on how to take care of the home, acumen, and to upscale in the marketplace. But It also left many single women confused and disillusioned or faith fatigued and wondering what's wrong with me. Because for some of them, the end didn't justify the means. They never became a Proverbs 31 wife. A husband never showed up. But guess who did and who does benefit from these multi-talented, ambitious, generous-hearted servant leaders and Proverbs 31 women without husbands? The church. Now keep in mind, this popular trend and movement started in the 90s during the peak of the mega church, and there were little to no women pastors. It created more skilled, hands-on deck, and worker bees to bring a pastor's, i.e., men's visions to life and fruition. I'm going to close with this scripture, 1 Corinthians 7:32 through 35, the Message version. I want you to live as free of complications as possible. When you are unmarried, you're free to concentrate on simply pleasing the master. Marriage involves you in all the nuts and bolts of domestic life and wanting to please your spouse, leading to so many more demands for your attention. The time and energy that married people spend on caring for and nurturing each other, the unmarried can spend on becoming whole. Remember that part, becoming whole and holy instruments of God. I'm trying to be helpful and make it easy as possible for you, not make things harder. All I want for you is to be able to develop a way of life in which you can spend plenty of time together with the master without a lot of distractions. That is 1 Corinthians 7:32 through 35, the Message version. Here's the Amplified version, 1 Corinthians 7:34. The unmarried woman or virgin is concerned about what matters to the Lord, how to be holy and set apart both body and spirit. Remember that part, set apart both body and in spirit. But the married woman is concerned about worldly things, how to please her husband. So when I read 1 Corinthians 7:32 and 35 in the Message version about nuts and bolts of domestic life, wanting to please your spouse, so many demands on your attention, time and energy, that reminded me more of the Proverbs 31 wife. Do single people have demands? Absolutely. Do single parents, unmarried women with children have similar demands? Yes. But again, I'm just pointing to what visually came up for me, and I'm an empath. So just reading that scripture reminded me more of Proverbs 31. When I read 1 Corinthians 7:34, the Amplified version, to be holy and set apart both body and spirit, what I think about more is Song of Solomon, the Shulamite. Being set apart also includes being set apart in a way that attracts the attention of a single godly man to see you and who may want you to become his Proverbs 31 wife. Song of Solomon contains a blueprint for single women to be set apart and whole, body and spirit. And I always like to emphasize this point about Song of Solomon. It's 8 chapters, y'all. 8. is 8 chapters. There are so many gems to glean from to help the single woman be whole and set apart, body and spirit. And once again, the Shulamite is identified as a Black woman. So this is why I stand by my current sentiments that too many single women are trying to be the Proverbs 31 woman / wife before becoming a Song of Solomon single. So maybe you don't have a need or a desire, for yourself. Let's change this for the next generation to help single young ladies and women acquire the tools and the mindset to learn to be Song of Solomon single like the Shulamite before trying to become a Proverbs 31 wife. This is Coach Roberta, your friendly disruptor and soul coach. Please be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. Click the notifications button so that you will receive notifications when I post to this private playlist or post to my YouTube channel in general. Until next time, beloved, I would that you prosper and be in good health even as your soul prospers.